Alright, so let's imagine you came to me and said, look, I don't want a watch collection, I don't want 20 watches, I don't want a drawer full of regret, I want one watch, just one, that does it all. Now that's a dangerous question to ask, because I'm almost professionally obliged to answer, well, it depends. But I'm going to ignore that instinct because for me a one-watch solution is certainly possible, usually actually advisable, but that watch then of course needs to tick a few boxes. So before we go to my number one most recommended watch, which is incredibly subjective of course, let me talk through the essentials of what you might also want to take into account of what that one watch should be. I'm not here going to pretend that my choice is the only choice. I see those videos on YouTube and I do really wonder who on earth follows that you must buy this watch advice. Hopefully nobody. You might not like the watch I recommend. Frankly speaking, I really don't care, but perhaps my reasoning in getting to this one watch recommendation can be helpful for anyone looking into that, trying to make an informed, hopefully independent decision. So here we go. Now, first it has to be versatile, right? So you don't necessarily want to show up at the office looking like you're wearing an ancient diving device on the wrist, and you preferably don't want to show up at the beach either with a dress watch that faints at the sight of water. The second, it has to be tough. I want screw down crown, real water resistance, not, 5 bar with some questionable water resistance. Sapphire crystal, whatever, I don't really care about that part as long as it doesn't explode at the first knock on a door frame. Then case material and finishing that holds up well over time, those sort of details. Relatively well, or rather very well constructed, and also a design that doesn't really invite 1,000 scratches in the first minute of wear. Now, third then, it has to come from a brand that isn't going to vanish overnight. Sorry, micro brands, I do appreciate you, but I'd never tell anyone to bet their only watch on a company that is one angry supplier away from closing shop. Anyway, that's a rant for another video, perhaps. Now then finally, it has to be, well, relatively affordable. Not just in one-time purchase cost, but also service cost. The true cost of ownership somehow needs to be reasonable. Whatever reasonable means to you, of course. If you're going to wear one watch every day forever, you do not want servicing costs that rival your mortgage. You just don't want that. So that's, in my view, important, especially nowadays when both purchase price and service costs are being pushed to new levels, nowhere near where they were just a few years ago. So, what watch actually ticks all those boxes? Well, here, for me, it's this one, the Seiko King Turtle. This is the evolution of one of Seiko's most iconic divers, the already beloved turtle, of course, a little bit dressed up, upgraded if you will, and ready, in my view, to be your one-watch solution. I have a detailed video on the channel here somewhere, so do have a look at that. So I won't go into all the details, but this is really and essentially the one I recommend most when people ask me or write an email. Now real quick, perhaps again without getting into too much detail, let's get into why. So you've got a case, it's a relatively large case, but thanks to those short curved lugs it wears very nicely on the wrists, and the proportions are spot on for really most wrists. The bezel, ceramic, quite luxurious if you ask me. It won't look like you dragged it across concrete after 6 months, lovely. It has a sapphire crystal here, not mandatory for me, but nice. It has that cyclops, some people love it, others hate it. I've really grown to appreciate it because none of my other watches actually have one. It has a screw-down crown, 200 meters of water resistance, ISO certified. I mean, awesome, perfect. At this point, I'm pretty much covered for what I'm looking for. But then, of course, if it's your only watch, hey, a little bit of lume, certainly it brings a little bit of joy every single day, so that's nice. And of course this watch has wonderful lume. If you had to propose one single watch forever, which one would it be? I am actually interested in hearing your recommendations, or rather reading your recommendations. It's actually quite helpful then also for afterwards for me to look into potentially watches I have ignored to date. Thank you very much and see you next time.